How's it going? Chris here. Thanks for tuning in the last little bit. I am on a quest tonight to find myself a copy of an unreleased room from Penguin, a mysterious room that we printed in a book when we thought we were going to release that room, but then we ended up not. Well, sort of not, but then we also sort of did. I'll get into that in a second. So the room, I got this tweet, just a little bit of background. I got a tweet recently where someone was asking me, why didn't you guys release this room? And so I can only tell my version of the story. So I don't speak for anybody else in the team, just me. There was a lot of stuff that pretty much made it out. There were very few things, at least in the early days, there were very few things we didn't release. Like, we basically just would release everything. As time went on, we got a little bit more picky. We got a little bit more, I don't want to say perfectionist, because that's not the right term, but close to perfectionist. We wanted to release the best quality stuff we could for you guys. And I think as we got to be a bigger team and we wanted to be a lot more professional and the rooms got some really amazing overhauls. Some of them I totally love. Like if you look at the lodge attic, the original attic was a little too bland. And then the new one was a lot more interesting. I mean, it might have been a little too inspired by Gravity Falls. The original version felt pretty thrown together, I think, compared to the newer one. So that's where I would see some of the rooms got really improved. There's a few rooms that we didn't release, but first off, let me talk about communications and how we would do things with stuff like the blog and the newspaper. We tried to be quite intentional about making sure that we knew what we were doing before we started talking about it. So there's some examples where we probably weren't ready to start talking about something, and then we launched it and it was just too soon. An example of that would be, I don't know if you guys remember the lead up to Card-Jitsu Fire. With Card-Jitsu Fire, we had planned to release the lead up to Fire. There'd be fiery skies. So here in Kelowna, when we had a big forest fire, the whole sky turned orange, and I was trying to catch this at night so you'd get a little bit of a feel for how dark it can get in the Okanagan. When it was a forest fire, you couldn't see the sky, and it was all smog, and because of the flames and the smoke and the sun, I'm not sure why it does this, but the sky turns orange. And so we thought, hey, that sort of makes logical sense to the Card-Jitsu Fire experience. There's going to be a volcano, there's going to be all this fire, so it would make sense that if there's fire in the sky would turn orange. So that would have been fine, but then the problem was when leading up to Fire, there were so many bugs. And so we kept delaying the launch. The problem was we delayed the launch, but in the world it was orange sky, orange sky, orange sky. It was orange sky for way too long, weeks and weeks and weeks, as we were trying to deal with the bugs that we couldn't figure out how to solve. And I'm sure the rest of the team would be much more intimately familiar with this, but basically, if I remember correctly, we took down the orange sky, went back to normal sky, and then Card-Jitsu Fire came out. So it was sort of it was a flubbed launch. It didn't go quite as smoothly as we had wanted it to. We tried to be quite careful about when we would communicate things outward, because if something happened where it went wrong or things went poorly, then what do? We've gone and talked about it, but now it's like, oh, hey, well, sorry guys, just kidding. We didn't mean to do that. Whoops, there we go. So, when you're working at a professional company, you really have to be buttoned up with your project management and your plans. Over time, we've invested more in really dedicated to how do we make sure that things launch on time and as expected, with now all the complexity of languages. And at that time, now we had multiple languages, and we had French, and we had Portuguese, and we might have, I think, also had Spanish at that point. So now things were a lot more complex. We had international offices, and we really had to coordinate our launches. So this book, we thought, I think I don't remember how this happened, but someone on the team, I'm sure like Zach or Tristan or one of those guys, could talk about how this sort of went out. But, when we were doing publishing, I don't know what happened, but I think at the time we thought, wouldn't it be cool if we did a sneak peek in a book? So you get the book and you see the first version of something. Like, instead of sneak peeking on the blog or sneak peeking in the newspaper, why don't we try sneak peeking in a book? Wouldn't that be totally like such a nice surprise for people who bought the books? Like, wow, this is something that's coming soon. The idea came, it got laid out, and I think we decided in-house with the Kelowna team that we were like, this might not be the best idea, maybe we shouldn't. So I believe somehow wires got crossed, communication happened, and we printed it. So we printed this 2-page spread of this book where it had this penguin showing off this welcome center room. And at the time, what we were thinking was this could be the new first room you experience in Club Penguin. So I'll talk about my first day, Polo Field, logging on to Club Penguin before I worked there. I remember logging on and going, what do I do? I didn't know what to do. I logged into the world and I went, okay. And I typed something and nobody sent anything in response. And I was like, this is kind of weird. Okay. That was my first time. It was a very quick log-on experience. And that was my first, very forgettable first experience with Club Penguin. And, so I think a lot of us realized that we wanted to have an experience where, you could actually, you got introduced to the world and how it works and where to go in the world and how to type and how to throw snowballs, like just some of the really easy stuff that, some younger players may not have known how to do. Like, we had this range of ages where we had teenagers down to like really young kids playing Club Penguin, and so they were all playing for different reasons. And some of them couldn't read very well compared to the older players who could totally read everything super well and could play the PSA missions no problem. So we thought, hey, this will be a great first experience to Club Penguin. And we thought, why don't we do like a welcome room, and this will be like the hub for the tour guides to hang out in. There'll be like a place for tour guides. You get welcomed. At one point we were talking about there'd be like a balloon ride, and maybe the balloon ride would show you all the different rooms of the world, and it would introduce you to everything that Club Penguin had to offer, and you could see it. And then you're like, wow, that's cool, I want to go and experience it. We also had an idea of a notice board, and so we noticed that, there were a lot of penguins who would show up in the town and would start advertising their parties. And so we thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we had this sort of notice board where you could make your own posters and images that would advertise your party. And so it's almost like when you go into a Starbucks or a coffee shop and you see everybody's like guitar lessons, and we thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool if there was a space in Club Penguin that actually had that, like a sort of a poster maker, and you could advertise your parties. So that's kind of one of the cool and interesting features that we didn't ever get around to doing. And I think that was because when there were some great designs done on it, but we had pretty limited amount of code resources. So a lot of our developers were tied up in a lot of different like mini games, upcoming events. We were spread pretty thin across a lot of projects. So we didn't do it. But the balloon ride, if I'm remembering correctly, we repurposed, and we brought that idea later into some other rooms. So you may have remembered seeing sort of a tour or an idea of a moving room with the sled, Santa's sled. There was a sort of a moving, you would get on the sled and then it would go for a ride. And then there was like sort of a parallax images behind it. That was a really great room, and I think the twins worked on that one. It's fantastic. And there was also a balloon ride type idea in the Festival of Flight. So I think a lot of the ideas that were in that sort of balloon concept that we really liked ended up on the island. They just ended up on the island as a one-time party. And I think in terms of originality, Festival of Flight is probably one of my favorite funny little quirky ideas that we did in Penguin. I still have very warm memories about Festival of Flight. I think it's one of the best parties from my perspective, and I've heard that from a lot of other players too, you guys. There was also another room that we were going to do, and then we didn't end up doing it, and I don't think it's been really documented anywhere, and I wish I had some of the sketches or the concept art for it. But we were going to do, the idea at the time was, why don't we redesign the book room? So this is the old original book room, so it's prior to it having like the Club Penguin Times printing press in it and stuff like that. The idea that I had was, what if every player could collect music? So I love to collect music. I collect vinyl records, and I have since I was the age of a Club Penguin player. And so I thought, wouldn't it be cool if you could control the music in the rooms with the music that you owned? And if it were me and if I owned Club Penguin myself, I would totally bring this idea to life. You go into this record store, and I liked the idea that it's sort of retro, because we had a few retro influenced things in there. And I thought, you go in there, you can buy your records, and then you can collect them, and then you can listen to whatever music you want if you've got the MP3 player, or that becomes your Igloo music menu. But the records idea, instead of being a shop, which we actually finished, by the way, there is a completed room where the book room would have turned into the record shop. And instead, and I think this is probably a slightly better idea than getting rid of the book room altogether. I like what happened with the book room in the end, where now it was a little bit more like you could play Mancala, but there's also the printing press. There's like these cool little role play things. You could sit and do like what Johnny would do and pretend to be the boss and sit in the chair and be like, hey, can you get me my coffee and get me my newspaper? That was pretty fun. It was 100% finished, colorized and everything. But what we didn't have was the functionality of collecting the music and adding it to your collection of music that you could play. So what happened instead was Sound Studio. So when we redid DJ3K as Sound Studio as a better music making app, we also made it that you could buy record packs. And so you would take your record packs, I guess, to go and manipulate. It didn't totally make sense to me. Like, you're going to Sound Studio to press buttons, but you're buying records. I don't know. In DJ3K, it would have made more sense because you have a DJ penguin that Screenhog did, the animated dancing penguin guy. I think Sound Studio is a better music-making app, but I sort of missed the in-between. I would have liked there to have been a record player, even as old man as that is. I just think records are cool. It's nice to have like colored vinyl, having like cool see-through vinyl and white vinyl and picture discs, and having different records and watching as they spin. It's just cool. So anyways, that's a couple of the unreleased rooms that we've done, or that we did as a team, or the team did, and I'm talking about. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope this answered the question that somebody had for me. And thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and if you have any other suggestions for future vlogs you'd like to hear about, let me know down in the comments. You know the drill. Bye guys.